Could the United States of America eventually be the United States of Mexico? I mean, think about that because it's a possibility. Now, if we go back to the late Ronald Reagan's presidency, when he granted amnesty to the illegals back in the 80s or during his presidency, you could trace it as a start to America's downfall. Now, when I say downfall, I'm talking about as far as illegal immigration is concerned. Because what happened was you had a group of white Americans, who decided that, look, instead of us paying other Americans, blacks in particular, paying them $10 an hour or $8 an hour to pick our fruit and vegetables, to do our lawns, to do construction, we can use these illegals to do it at a fraction of the cost. And they'd be happy. And we wouldn't have to worry about them forming any unions. We could just take some property on our land and build a little trailer park community and let them stay there, and the government would never know. They could work for us and we'd make tons of money. Well, there's the greed, American greed, set in. But I don't think they anticipated that the illegals would eventually learn how to manipulate the system. You know, they get free government assistance. They get welfare. The children get a chance to go to school free. And then they learn how to have this policy of what they call anchor babies, where you have a baby in America and then, it's considered a U.S. citizen. So these things have advanced and progressed over the years. And think about the fact that most Hispanic people are Catholic. They don't believe in birth control and having abortions. So where you had maybe 10 million decades ago of illegal immigrants, now you have 20, 30 million plus. Who knows how many? And think about this. I mean, once they move into a certain area, they grow, they expand, they populate. And they move into certain neighborhoods. I mean, in the past, I guess you could say decade, they've moved into the so-called black communities. But eventually, and very rapidly, they will be moving into what's considered as the white communities. Now, white America cannot control that. There's very little they can do. Because if you go down by the border areas, let's say the border of Texas, borders of California, you'll find many of those towns already have a majority population of Spanish-speaking people. My thing is, how is it that a group of Hispanic or Spanish-speaking people, how can they not speak English and live in America for decades and not be deported? I mean, it's beyond me. I mean, it's like if I move to a country and I don't speak their language, but I'm able to stay there for decades and work and make money to send back to America, and they allow me to do that. Something's wrong with that. But yet we have that here in America. So I think what, the Hispanics, those from South America and from Mexico, what they've done is that they've kind of sat back and watched the black and white Americans go at each other, and they go unnoticed. They eventually get educated, and the more educated they become, the more that they more knowledgeable they become of how America works, and they kind of like assimilate into American society, and they just move on. I mean, they're populated heavily in areas of Texas, California, and let's say New Mexico, Arizona, and the southern states. But eventually, they'll be moving up north because there's just so many that I don't think they're going to just stay in one place, or, maybe you see a few in maybe half of America, half of the United States, but eventually they'll be in every state. Now we saw what happened with, again, with the construction jobs, with the lawn care, like I said, the picking of the fruits and vegetables, a lot of the jobs that many say that others didn't want. And they allow the illegal immigrants to come in and take it over. Now, think about it. Who did those jobs before the illegal immigrants? Think about that for a minute. But back to what I was saying, because if illegal immigrants, or Hispanic people, were to be the majority population in many of the cities first, and then they become mayors and take over the government, and then they expand into the states and become governors and take over those governments. I mean, how long do you think it would take before those states who become majority populated by Hispanics, how long do you think it's going to take before the talk of annexation comes up? Mexico wanting to buy, let's say, Texas. I don't know what Texas has, between 26, 30 million people. And let's just say in the next 25 years, half of those are Hispanic people. Well, what do you think would take place, would transpire? At least the talks could possibly begin. And then you have New Mexico. I mean, like I said, eventually what would happen? Now, would, in the next 30 years, would the United States be predominantly Hispanic? And would you call the majority, who is whites, would you call the majority now the minority? Could there be a vast migration of whites into Europe? And where would that leave black Americans? Would there be a war between black Americans and the Hispanics, and black Americans get wiped out? Or would blacks be able to, some, be able to go to certain parts of Africa? Would Africa allow them to come and live? I mean, all these things, there are possibilities. But I don't think that white Americans really expected that. I think they were too preoccupied with finding ways to keep black Americans in check and under their control, making sure that they didn't advance too fast and become too powerful and be too competitive. All the while, the Hispanic community, Mexicans and South Americans, were just sitting back, and taken over, so to speak. So when you think about it, could the United States of America someday be the United States of Mexico? Just something to think about.